Welcome to the Startup Support Surgery podcast, where we light the entrepreneurial spark in medics and healthcare professionals. Join me, Dr. Jo Watkins, GP, business coach and co-founder of The How People, on a journey to discover where your medical know-how meets the business world. This will help you find some clarity on how to balance work, passions and family so that you can gain more freedom and control over your life, but also continue to help people, which is actually why most of us went into medicine to start with. Embarking on this entrepreneurial adventure is not easy. It is a roller coaster of emotions, but it's hugely rewarding and exciting in the process. Drawing on my 20 years of blending medicine and business as a GP, I am here to share experiences, insights and lessons. Expect lively chats, expert interviews and real-life stories from medics who have taken their own path. Let's break free from traditional healthcare norms and explore more innovative ways of making a real difference to people's health and well-being, along with paving the way for a brighter future for us as healthcare professionals. Oh, don't miss my free PDF called From Stethoscope to Startup, which is an 11-page guide in the show notes full of practical help and advice. This is your roadmap to kickstarting your journey with us. Enjoy the show. In this episode, I am interviewing one of my business mentor heroes, Kate Toon. Kate Toon is a British-born business mentor and award-winning digital marketing coach who now lives in Australia with her partner and teenage son. She is an absolutely brilliant online entrepreneur success story and has been a huge inspiration to me over the last few years. She is a straight-talking copywriting coach, educator, speaker, author, and podcaster. In fact, there isn't much that Kate can't do. Kate describes herself as a misfit on a mission to help other business humans create their own version of online success. To top it all off, she's also a bumfluencer in the online world, as her bottom has been the focus of quite a lot of attention on social media in the last few years. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you. Me and my bottom are very glad to be here.
Well, I'm delighted that you brought your bottom here to chat to us this morning, this afternoon, wherever we are in the world at the moment. One of us is in Wales and one of us is in Sydney, but that is the way this rolls. So I am really, really delighted to have you here. So tell everybody in your own words what you do, who you help, that sort of shenanigans.
Yeah, so I think you kind of rounded it up. I've done a lot of different things, but these days I do sort of think of myself as a business mentor. I don't really like the word coach. I'm a bit icky about it. But because I'm still kind of in the arena fighting the same lions as everybody else. I fancy myself an author. I hope one day to write a real book, not a business book. Do a bit of podcasting, a bit of speaking, but generally the world of digital marketing is my thing, and running a business, you know, how to do the finances and the processes and all that stuff as well.
Amazing. And you've been doing this for a while now. Would that be fair to say?
So long. Yeah, so I started my business when my son was in my tummy, and he is now a big, hulky 15-year-old, and my business is a big, hulking 15-year-old business. So yeah, it feels like a long, long time. And, you know, as you know, running your own thing, the effort to get up every day and motivate yourself and do stuff over that period of time is hard work, you know, which is why a lot of people give up and go back and work for the man. And maybe I should too. Who knows?
Well, that's an interesting thing for us to kick us off, because I think when you've been in this business for as long as you have seen a massive amount of change, I would imagine. I mean, I've seen a massive amount of change in the tiny amount of time I've been in the online world, 4 or 5 years, 15 years. And there are days where we all know that it is a lot easier to go and show up and work for somebody else. That's
yes, exactly.
The honest truth, right?
It really is. And I think, you know, recently you mentioned that I bought a bookshop. And to be honest, that feels like a nice little job, even though I'm still my own boss. So this afternoon, you know, I'm working this morning on my online business. Then at midday, I'm going to the shop. And in the afternoon, I'm just going to sit in the shop and sell books. And that for me is really, really enjoyable. Is it financially viable? Not really, but it's enjoyable. And sometimes that is more important.
Okay. And that kind of came along by accident, didn't it? So the opportunity to buy the bookshop.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, they say when one door closes, another opens and all that jazz. I had literally just closed down one of my memberships. It was called the Clever Copywriting School, because I just felt I had too much on my plate. And, my line is I felt like too little butter scraped over too much bread, So I thought I'm going to narrow down my field of vision, get rid of my membership. And then the next day I saw a little email saying, the bookshop where I live is going to close because, it's going down the toilet. And at first I went and offered the woman investment, but she just wanted to get out. Do you know what I mean? And so, I thought, why not? And I did think it through and I did look at the financials, but I didn't really think it through. And it's been quite a shock to the system. It's all good now, but it's been a rocky 5 or 6 months getting my head around running a shop.
Okay. Well, I'd love to know a bit more about that. But before we go down the book line, because I want to talk to you about your books, the bookshop, let's just go back to when you first started this. And you mentioned a membership, you mentioned your online business. We have a lot of our listeners, as you know, are medics and healthcare professionals. And I get a bit of a bee in my bonnet about both the healthcare system and the education system, in that there are other ways. And both of those big pieces in this country don't seem to have moved with these other ways of getting information, the right information from the right person to the person that wants to receive it. So tell me how that online business world works for you and the people that you help.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same here in Australia. Getting medical advice and education is controlled, by the government. And, the government aren't well versed at keeping up with digital trends and providing multiple ways of doing things. They're very slow to get on board with new technology. So, and I think my world is faster to get on board. So, about 15 years ago, there weren't that many courses, or if you were going to do a course, it would be through an education provider. There weren't, apps, there weren't, forums for people to learn about things that weren't kind of traditional learning. But that's what radically changed. And, you talked about what's happened in the last 15 years. When I launched my course, which is now 10 years old, there were no other courses of its type in Australia. I was a complete pioneer and I was very excited by that. Now there are hundreds. The market is very crowded. But I guess the benefit of what I call automated passive income digital products. So that's downloads, courses, memberships, and masterminds, is that you can move from one to many. You can make something once and sell it to more people or sell it again and again. This therefore often lowers the barrier to entry to working with you, because most people, the price is the main barrier. They can't afford to work with you. But you can obviously offer these things at a lower price because you're selling them in a group format. So it gives people who maybe couldn't traditionally get this help the opportunity to get help from you. That was a long answer. I apologize.
That's a brilliant way of putting it. And I think this concept of passive income is something that people are really, really getting hold of now. And what I see that I think is quite difficult is that people think that it's easy. Now, I know you have written an entire book about making money while you sleep, which by definition, I would assume means that that is about passive income. I have a copy of your first book here, but I've yet to buy your second book, and I'm slightly ashamed to say that. But I will be.
It's available on Amazon UK. You go for it.
Well, I must have. It was on the top of my to-do list for a week, and then it must have disappeared. But this concept of passive income is attracting people. Particularly maybe from the corporate world or from the health sector or whatever, who almost are like, well, that seems like a much easier way. So why don't I give up my job and go and write a course? Now, let's talk about the issues with somebody doing that. So no audience, no social media presence, no email marketing list, nobody knows about them, and they decide they're going to run a course. What sort of problems are they going to come into?
Well, I think you've just made it very clear. But I think traditional passive income usually requires an upfront investment, an upfront amount of capital. So if you're going to invest in shares, or you're going to buy a property, or you're going to lease an asset, or you're going to invest in a business, you need capital. The joy of digital products is you don't need capital, but you do need time. Maybe you don't need financial capital, but you do need time. And as you said, what many people do is they launch into making the thing, whereas really what they need to do is launch into making an audience to buy the thing when the thing is ready. So if you go away now and spend 3 months recording videos for a course and then go, ta-da, you're going to get tumbleweeds, you're going to feel like you're a failure, and you're probably going to give up. Whereas if you went out tomorrow and just maybe made a very simple little checklist or something and gave it away for free and saw if you could get 100 people to sign up for the free thing, then you're building an audience, because you need maybe 100 people to get the free thing, then maybe 10 people to buy the low cost thing, then maybe one person will buy your thingy thing. That's, it is a broad generalization, but it's the funnel that matters more than the thing. It's how you get people from, I don't know who you are, to here, take all my money. And that's the bit that most people miss. Or they start building their funnel after they've made the thing. So they've already made a huge investment of time and now they're going to try and sell it. No, you have to sell it first and then build it.
Yeah, and this is brilliant. I love talking about this, because this is, again, something that medics struggle with, because they're not used to winging it. And actually, there is a lot of winging it that has to happen, because if you sit in your ivory tower making your perfect thing and making it all shiny and lovely and professional because you're a doctor and you need to make it look like that because that's what you've been told you need to show up as every day, then you've got no one to sell it to. So this is really important stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is as well, you are not the best judge of what you're making. You may think you are the expert, but really it's an iterative process with your audience. So whatever you make, you need to make it like 70% good. And then the rest of it's going to come from your audience as they're doing it. Because, when I first built my SEO course, I thought I knew exactly how to teach people. But then when you actually get in a real life situation and someone's like, you just brushed over that concept, can you go into that in more detail? And I'm like, really? But that's basic. Like, don't you get that? No, they don't. And also working out whether your audience are visual learners, or they like to read, or they like to implement, or they like to listen, or they like examples, working out how to teach. You may be an expert at what you do, but you're not necessarily an expert at teaching people how to do what you do. And the only way to learn that is to do it, to see the whites of people's eyes and see when they start to drool with tedium, and then make changes. So if you make a perfect thing, you're only going to be dismantling it later to rebuild it in a slightly different format. So that's permission, because I'm a massive perfectionist, but perfectionism is a symptom of insecurity. I can't let anybody see that I'm not perfect, because if they see that I'm not perfect, then I'm going to lose my professionalism, and people are going to not respect me at all.
So let's talk a little bit about this perfectionism, because I don't know whether you know, but when I first met you, I think one of the things that I was blown away with was your showing up as yourself, like unapologetically you. And actually, I think it was probably in the middle of COVID, but it was back in the Clubhouse, the Clubhouse boom. That was, and I think that was COVID times. But you were talking about having shown up somewhere and had a lot of grief from people about showing up in a certain way. I think you'd had like a Superwoman outfit, and somebody had like taken you down on Twitter. And I just thought, my God, it's so refreshing to hear somebody just being themselves. So how important is this? Well, we've mentioned perfectionism, but how important is this showing up as you when you're dealing with people in online businesses?
Well, I think, you summed it up very well earlier, that you kind of, no one knows who you are. And how do people get to know who you are? Well, you have to kind of show them your values and your personality and your quirks and your interests. Because if I'm lining up two different people and comparing them, and their services or their products are a similar price, they're both super experienced, how am I going to decide whether I pick Joe or Kate? It'll never be that situation because you would pick both of us. But how am I going to decide? It's probably not, if all things are equal, it's going to be something like, well, I just like the way Joe comes across. Or she once showed this really funny picture of her doing this. Or she's got a dog and I love dogs. It's going to be something quite personal that makes me make the decision to buy from you because I like you. And if I like you, I'm more inclined to trust you. And if I trust you, I'm more inclined to give you money. So to build a personal brand, you can create these pillars of my values are being honest and being this, but you have to show up as that day in, day out. So the closer your personal brand is to the truth, the better. Warts and all, because I have bad qualities as well. And that just means you can turn up as yourself wherever you are. Whatever post you put up on LinkedIn, it's on brand. If you're at a networking event, you're on brand. There's no disconnect between Joe Watkins on Facebook and Joe Watkins on Instagram, because it's just you. And it makes life a lot easier. It feels harder because it feels vulnerable to be yourself without some shield of pretension. But actually, when you take the shield away, you just, you kind of accept that not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So has that been something that you've got better at with time? This you don't care.
I do. I mean, look, even I still have moments. Like I was looking the other day at, someone who, for some reason, I look at. We all have people that we look at online and go, gnash our teeth. We've all had them, right? And they're much more polished, much more joyful than I am, kind of a grinny kind of human. And to me, it looked vaguely like a grimace, when the smile isn't hitting the eyes, but just much more polished and better at showing up in a positive way every day. And I can't do that, because I'm British and I'm bleak and I'm sarcastic. And there's a little bit of envy, but I just, as I said, I'm here for the long term, and I feel like you can sustain a sort of false persona for a little bit, but sooner or later people are going to start to see through it. So it has been difficult, and there's still moments where I make faux pas or say the wrong thing. But generally it's easier than the pretension.
Amazing. And what is stopping you? What is great about running your own business, being an author, running your own days and time? What is it that keeps you from going back to working for somebody else?
I mean, I think I wouldn't be employable. I'm one of the reasons why I think I left mainstream corporate life, and I think a lot of the reasons why people start their own business is they don't quite fit the mold. A lot of people in my community are neurospicy, or they have big personalities or very small personalities, and they just don't fit that corporate process, which works very well for many people. I have vague objectional defiance disorder, so I don't like being told what to do. So much so that I don't even like being told what to do by myself. I've got a to-do list that I wrote yesterday, and I'm a bit like, I don't want to do that. Like, who wrote that? Which idiot wrote? I'm not doing that. And it was me. So I think I would be very difficult to tell what to do. And that is one of the main reasons. But also, the luxury of, I'm now sitting here looking out at my little swimming pool in Australia with my dog. I'm working 3 hours, and then I can go and watch a bit of telly in bed if I want. I couldn't give up that for all the money in the world, So, yeah.
Amazing. So let's just touch on a couple of struggles. I know you've been quite public about the fact you've had a difficult year. And I think one of the struggles with running your own business is when the shit does hit the fan or something happens, it's pretty hard. I mean, can you touch on that a little bit for anyone that might be going through something similar?
Yeah, I mean, look, over 15 years, there's been massive highs and massive lows. There's been years where I've had really low income, years when I've had really high income, and that's made me feel quite stressed. Rounds of my courses where I've had 10 people and I felt like a failure, then rounds when I've had 80 people and I felt utterly overwhelmed. This year, though, has been and I've had personal drama. In this 15-year period, I've separated from my partner, lots of things have happened. But this year, pretty much every plan I had went down the toilet because my dad got sick. He's in the UK. I went back to try and spend time with him. And then I had to come back to Australia, and he died after I came back. And then my mum moved to Australia, and I was with her during the worst of the grief, So it's been a really taxing year. And I'd hate to turn sorrow into some kind of LinkedIn hero's journey. When people are like, oh, this happened, and I'm amazing now. But I guess one thing it did for me was prove that my passive income business worked, because I was barely able to turn up for 3 or 4 months, but things ticked along. I do have a small team who work a few hours a week. They kept things ticking along. There was enough there to keep it going. So that was good. But also it's really made me rethink how I want to move forward in my business. I don't want to work. I have worked hard for many years, and so it's been a bit of an introspection and a navel gaze. And I'm in a funny place. I mean, I said to Joe before we started the podcast, how are you? And the usual response to that, if you're British, is say, I'm great. How are you? But I'm not that great at the moment. I am a bit lost and wondering what my next step is going to be. Some people call it summit syndrome. I've ticked off a lot of what I wanted to do, and I'm running out of goals. And I'm very goal orientated, and I kind of measure my success by my productivity. And therefore, when there's less to do, I'm very uncomfortable with that. So I'm good at many things, but one thing I'm not good at is relaxing and enjoying the space that now I've built, this is what I wanted, right? Be careful what you wish for. I've built a business where I only have to work a few hours a week. But what the frick am I supposed to do in the other hours? Help! So there.
This sounds very familiar. I'm loving the summit syndrome. I've not heard of that before. That's brilliant.
And now do you make another summit, or I'm trying to climb down the mountain gracefully. I'm trying to come down gracefully. I'm closing parts of my business, potentially selling parts of my business to kind of simplify my model, because I went all out. I had everything, going on courses and this and that, and it's a lot. But with that simplification comes space. And then, what do I do in that space? Do I make another project? I'm trying not to, but it's hard not to.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we are drawing to an end. Let's just touch on the bookshop thing before I then go and ask you about your advice. Because obviously you've got this digital business, which is under your control, and you can do it from anywhere, and you can have your passive income. In stark contrast to what you then created which was this beautiful, I just want to come and have coffee and sit there with you all afternoon. Beautiful bookshop in your town.
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming involves things like stock taking, opening hours, staff to be there, all the things. How is that?
It's ridiculous. I mean, really, I've gone the other way around. Most people would move from something like that to trying to get online. And what I really didn't understand when I bought a shop is that you're essentially buying a job. A shop probably makes enough for one person to have a reasonable income, and maybe have a couple of part-timers. I cannot work in the shop full time because I just can't deal with people for 8 hours a day. I'm really quite introverted, and I've been on my own in a hut for 15 years. So I'm socially inept. So I can do it. I can turn up for a bit, but I can't work there. So therefore, I'm having to employ people, which is great. I'm employing 4 people in the local area, which feels really good to give local people jobs. But then obviously the way to make that financially profitable is hard, right? Because a lot of my outgoings is people. But then there's rent, and the stock. I've probably got about $80,000 worth of money tied up in stock, which will sell, but it won't sell today. So it's been a massive head shift. And yes, I've chosen something that really ties me to Umina. But you know what? I really want it to be tied to Umina. I've been a bit of a digital, not a nomad, but a digital person dealing in intangible things that don't exist, talking to people purely through a screen for years. And I felt disconnected with my community. Now I feel at the heart of my community. I know people are like, hey, Kate, when I walk down the street. So to me, that's really important. Umina is a bit like a little British village. A lot of Australia isn't like that, but Umina has a high street with a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, a bookshop. And I want to be tied here. I want to feel a sense of place. So it's taken a lot, but it's given me more, I think.
Oh, it sounds absolutely wonderful. And I'm sure that is going to fill all of this time that you might have as you sell off bits of your business. I can just imagine that. And it's so lovely for your mum to be a part of that as well. So thank you for sharing that with us. So before we leave, because we're going to sign off, what about your top tip, 1, 2, 3, whatever, however many you have, to somebody like me who is, doesn't have all your wealth of experience, maybe a few years ago, dipping my toe into the online business or trying to help people package up my expertise and do it in a different way. So your early entrepreneurial self or somebody else, what would be your best advice to somebody just starting out?
I mean, honestly, it comes down to the 2 most tedious pillars of business, which is time and money. You really need to be honest about the time that you genuinely have to be fully present in your business. It's really hard, as we've seen on this podcast, to be trying to do 2 things at one time. To be, my first book is all about that, to try and be a parent while you're literally on social media trying to do posts. I think you have to be on or off. And that may mean that you're on a lot less, but at least when you are on, you're fully focused. So being honest about that. And when I did an evaluation of most working mums, dads as well, you maybe have 25 hours a week to work, but really only 15 of those will be productive and billable and making you money. So therefore, based on that, if you want to make 10K a month, how much does each hour need to be worth? How much do you need to be billing yourself out at? Now, you may not get there today. You might set that as a goal, but being realistic about that, you're not going to make 100 grand if you can only work 5 hours a week. So stop putting that pressure on yourself. Be realistic. Especially for parents, this period's where our kids are very young and they need us a lot. it goes away. My son's 15. I could not talk to him for a week and he'd probably be delighted as long as I ordered pizzas. In other ways, he needs me still. But in 3 years, he'll be off. He'll be off to college and I'll still be like 54. I've still got plenty of time to do stuff. So I think being realistic about your time, really getting clear on your money goals and, setting some kind of envelope or profit first system in place so you're clear what money is yours, and financial planning. Those are my main things. Those are for business things, but then from a personality thing, I think it's as soon as possible, try to get comfortable with who you are, flaws, warts and all, and start sharing that to the world rather than some, curated, pretty version of yourself, which I think you do an excellent job of that. Like, you're instantly likable and affable. And therefore, it doesn't really matter to me what you're selling. I'm on the journey with Jo Watkins, not with her current project. The line I like to use is, you are Madonna, and the things that you are making are your albums. And you're going to go through your disco phase, your 80s phase, your whatever phase, but I'm going to stay in love with Madonna. And that's what you need to build, that Madonna kind of love. I mean, I know she's a bit gone off the rails a bit now, but you know what I mean? Years and years of loyalty. Yeah. You are Madonna.
I'm totally with you. Love it, love it, love it. And that's a brilliant analogy. And that's perfect for me. I love a bit of Madonna, love a bit of change, love any kind of 80s or 90s music. But it's been a complete joy, pleasure, and a real privilege and honor to have you on the podcast. So obviously, we're going to link up the books below. We've got 6 Figures in School Hours and Making Money While You Sleep.
6 Figures While You Sleep. Yeah, there you go.
6 Figures While You Sleep. 6 Figures in School Hours. We've got, obviously, your memberships will link as well. And, find Kate wherever she is. And do you still do Misfits Facebook?
I do. Still got a free group called Misfit Entrepreneurs. You can join that too. Thanks, Jo. It's always lovely to
take care of yourself.
I miss England.
I hope this episode has sparked some new ideas or challenged your thinking. Transitioning from medicine to business is not easy. It's about adapting our skills while embracing the unknowns of entrepreneurship. It can be nerve-wracking, but remember, you are not alone on this journey. Please feel free to reach out to me via direct message on LinkedIn or Instagram, or just shoot me an email at jo@bendylegs.com for support. And don't forget to grab the free PDF from the show notes, From Stethoscope to Startup, which is your go-to guide and resource for diving into entrepreneurship. Many thanks for tuning in. I will see you next time. Thanks for spending your precious time with me.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.